So this is our District 11 4-H record book training. We will cover everything in record books, from the basics to how to put one together to even some maybe more advanced editing options. And so as we go through today's presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the text chat, and I'll go through those at the very end. So an overview of the 4-H record book. What is it? What is record keeping? Why do we keep records? What kinds of records do you keep? So let's think about this a little bit. What kinds of records do you keep at home? Drop those answers in the text chat for me. Personally, I know I keep financial records, I keep health records, I keep any business records that I may need. When I was growing up and in the 4-H program, guess what? I kept livestock records of my livestock project. I kept records of all of my different 4-H projects. But we do this because it keeps a memory, if you will, or it's an evidence of different activities that we do in our 4-H projects. So, I went too fast. There's different ways that we can keep records. We can keep them like in a scrapbook, or we can keep them electronically. It's all up to you. But the important thing is that we can keep them, and that we do keep them, so that way we have access to them whenever we need to refer to them for anything. So in development, record keeping is a very valuable skill. It is part of the life skills model. And so if you look at the head portion in the lower left-hand quadrant, you'll see there that under managing, keeping records is really an important life skill. So I know that you think, kids, I know that y'all think like it's not that super important and that you don't need to, but I promise you, as you get older, you need to know how to keep these records. Why? Because what a record allows us to do is it allows us to set a goal and then work to achieve that goal, and then review the process in between, how we got from point A to point B. It's very practical. You'll hear a number of our 4-H members say that their 4-H record book made it really easy for them to apply for the 4-H Opportunity Scholarship when they became a senior in high school. And then again, it's just a recognition of all of our accomplishments. It's all the awards that we get, and then any project recognition that we receive. We keep records in the 4-H program to be able to tell us how they've grown, what they learned, where they came up short. But we do it in a way so that way it's creatively done, and they express that creativity in their story or maybe in the way they depict their project growth. But this is also, it demonstrates the importance of keeping a written document. And then of course, this, like I said previously, gives us a platform to set some goals and documentations of the plan that we did to reach each of those goals. And then finally, certainly not the most important, is it provides an opportunity for competition. So I want to take some time and just visit on this, because there's two different avenues that we can visit here on. There is a record book where you can just learn how to keep records, and that's fine. And then there's an avenue to be competitive. Two very different avenues, two very different pathways. You just have to decide which one you're going to pursue. Now, for some counties, especially some of the counties that are on tonight, they have a requirement that they have to turn in a record book every year to participate in their livestock show or whatever that may be. That can look a lot differently than if you were just wanting to compete. And so if you're wanting to compete, we're gonna visit a little bit on that tonight, on what a competitive record book looks like. But ultimately, you've got to decide what your goal is. Are you just wanting to learn how to keep records? And we can do that. Or are you wanting to learn how to compete? And so we'll go through both of those avenues. You'll hear me reference them through tonight's training. But ultimately, it's up to you and the choice that you want to make. So for goal setting, There's different ways that we can keep these records. You can write them on a calendar. You can write um, items on an index card and put them in an index card box. You can put them in a binder or a spiral. Of course, there's Google Forms or social media ways, and there's mobile apps out there now too. But this gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we did in our 4-H year and how we can make it better in the future. Personally, as a kid, 25 years ago, my goodness, um, I wrote everything down in a spiral. We kept project records in a spiral in a notebook. I wrote down my pigs' weights and how they were gaining and or if they'd lost weight and how much feed I was feeding them and how much time I exercised them and when we gave them vaccinations or if they needed any medical treatment. We kept all of those records in a binder or spiral. So then at the end of the year, they were all together. It looked a little different when I expanded my 4-H projects. And it looked a little different because I had different types of projects, right? So when I was doing my food and nutrition project, we used the index card box method. And we would write down things that I did. We'd write the date in the top left-hand corner of the index card. And then I wrote down what I did. And so maybe in my food nutrition project, maybe I helped make dinner one night, or if I cooked a meal for somebody, or if I studied something. All of those things went into that index card. You really just have to figure out what type of method works for you. If you have a Google account, it's really easy to set up a Google form and to be able to collect that type of information, and then it dumps it into an Excel spreadsheet for you. So you really just need to figure out what works for you, what's important, what's not important, and what your purpose is. So for the competitive record book, these are some important things to know. We have 3 age divisions. They follow our age divisions that we have in the 4-H program. Juniors are 3rd through 5th grade. Intermediates are 6th through 8th grade. Seniors are 9th through 12th grade. There are 4 parts to the record book. We have a check sheet, the personal information page. Both of those are not judged. And then what does get judged is the 4-H story and photo portfolio, and then the report forms that follow that. There are 25 program categories. They compete at 3 levels, the county, district, and state level for seniors. For juniors and intermediates, we compete at the county and district level only. There is an opportunity for our senior level members, if they win first place, to go on the Texas 4-H Leadership Conference, and that trip is into Washington, D.C. every year. So there's some opportunities there. You'll see there's 25 different categories listed. We have everything from agricultural sciences to STEM, health and personal safety, gardening and horticulture, photography. So these competitive categories align with the 4-H projects that we offer here in the state of Texas. And so if there's a 4-H project, there's likely a competitive category for them to compete in. So here's the thing. If you try to start a 4-H record book the day or even the week before it's due, it's likely not going to happen because of the amount of information that's requested in the 4-H record book. And so what we like to ask and tell our youth is that as it relates to your project, you need to start keeping those records and set those goals at the beginning of the year. You really need about 3 weeks. And that's 3 weeks taking some breaks, putting it away, walking away from it to put a record book together, because there's quite a few sections to the report form, and there's also the 4-H story that has to be done. The 4-H story is separate from the report forms, and so we'll walk through those, but make sure you're not waiting till the last minute, because that's often when we see a lot of frustration, and that's when people get really upset and frustrated with the process. So here's a summary of what the record book looks like. So, like I said earlier, the check sheet and the personal information page, those are included, um, but they are not judged. The 4-H story and photo portfolio, excuse me. So you have the story, which is the actual written text, and we have some requirements there, some minimum pages numbers and maximum pages allowed. And then we have 4-H photos. You do not have to have them separately. You can incorporate them together, but we want to make sure that they're equivalent in there, um, and that your photos help tell your story, right? Um, Photography record books do not include additional photos anymore. We used to, but we don't anymore. So there's some basics there for the 4-H story and photo portfolio. In your story, we'll go into more detail, but it's really kind of a combined, just a really big snapshot of who you are as the 4-H member and what you do in the 4-H program and why it's important to you. And then you'll see we have 7 sections to the report form. So we talk about your project experiences or leadership experiences, community service, other 4-H projects that you participate in other than your main project, um, and then recognition awards, non-4-H activities, which is where we put like school and church activities, and then any college and career exploration that's there. This is the check sheet. You can see it. It needs to be checked at each level, but it's just asking for some basic information. This is the personal information page. You'll see it here. Nothing too drastic. It's just asking for some information there, and some signatures. We do have to have those signatures at the county and district level for the book to be considered for judging. So the story should have information about yourself, your family, your community, when and why you joined 4-H, what your goals were for your main project. And then you can include some other information if you have the space that talks about how 4-H has helped you become a better leader, a better citizen, and how it's helped you set goals and develop new interests. I can tell you I've seen some really funny stories over the ages, I guess in my 14 years of being in extension. And the when and the why you joined 4-H is pretty funny sometimes, because we do get some of the I joined because my mama told me to, but it turns out I really liked it. And so we really want to hear from the youth perspective. And so parents, I'm going to encourage you here, let the creative juices flow. Let's really hear some of that youth voice in there, and really kind of allow us to get a feel for who the 4-H member is and what's important to them. So the story should not just be a repetition of the report forms. It needs to tell something different, or an expansion of what you do in your project work. And it should reflect on the previous year, mainly. Um, Captions are not required, but they can be combined and they can sometimes assist in telling the 4-H story. So the combined portfolio should be within the page limits listed on the record book summary for each age division. Text should be double spaced with a minimum of a 10-point font. Photos can be placed throughout the story, as long as you're adhering to the minimum number of equivalent pages. Um, and then, of course, like I said earlier, record books in the photography category do not have any additional pages for their photo portfolio. So the report form, we made a change a couple of years ago. We now have the same form for all the age divisions. We request the same content. What varies is the number of allowable entries and pages, based on their age division. And so we really want you to pay attention to that. And it's going to be the current year and 3 preceding years. Obviously, if it's your first year in 4-H, you're only going to have one. But if you're a senior in 4-H, and you have, if you're getting to that like 5-6 years of participation, we really want to make sure that you tell us about your entire 4-H career. So you can use the traditional forms via Microsoft Word, or you can use a Z Suites online app. So there is two different ways. With Z Suites, though, what I will tell you is there is no electronic submission. You still have to download the report form from that. But what Z Suites does offer that I think is really cool um, is that it stores it for you. Um, and you can just go in and update it each year. And so I think it's really a neat system, but you've got to decide what works for you. So section one, let's talk a little bit about what do you put in section one. We want to know, what is your project? How did it change or grow? What did you do to learn about your project, and tell us what you've learned and what it taught you. So we want to include any experiences gained in other youth organizations, but that were applicable to the 4-H project. So for instance, a lot of our members are FFA members also. And so that's okay, because we know that some youth show livestock in the 4-H and FFA programs. And so you can include that there as long as it was applicable to the 4-H project. Individual directed project learnings experiences are also acceptable. And so in this section, you'll include up to 4 projects in the current year and up to 3 preceding years. It'll be up to 2 years for juniors on that. So there are some maximum number of pages. Juniors will have 2 pages, intermediates will have 3, and seniors will have 4 pages that they can use to show us their project experiences. Section 2 is leadership. And so this table includes some very specific, it requests some very specific information. It requests the year, the leadership activity, the role, the level, and what the responsibilities, duties, or accomplishments were. You'll want to list what you did to assist others throughout the year. And you'll want to include general leadership, such as whether or not you served as a club officer or you were on county council or any different county committees. But we also want to include the current year and up to 3 preceding years of 4-H activities for that. There are some page limits and entry limits there. And so juniors can have 10 entries in 1 page, intermediates will have 15 entries in 2 pages, and seniors can have 25 entries in 3 pages. Section 3 is community service. And this is, we want to know, what did you do to help others because of your involvement in the 4-H program? And so the table asks for, again, some very specific information, but we want to know, what did you do to help others? Did you do any roadside cleanups, or maybe you collected some canned goods? You know, we've had a lot of opportunity this year to help others because of COVID-19. And so we want to make sure that you tell us your story and what you did to help others. You'll see there that there are some page limits and entry limits. So again, juniors can have 10 entries in 1 page, intermediates will have 15 entries in 2 pages, and seniors will have up to 25 entries and 3 pages. So section 4 talks about your other 4-H projects. This is any other 4-H projects that you didn't list in section 1. So remember, in section 1, you have up to 4 main projects, but maybe there's some like little projects that really weren't your main projects, but you did them anyway, right? And so this is where that information goes. So you can include the current year and up to 3 preceding years for intermediates and seniors, or up to 2 preceding years for juniors. You'll include any number of projects, and there are the page limits there that you can see. There's 1 page for juniors and 2 pages for intermediates and seniors. Section 5 is 4-H recognition and awards. And so this again is a chart. We want to know what the recognition was and why it was important to you. I can tell you in this table, we really want to know why it was important to you. I need you to tell me that why. That's going to be the most important thing. So again, here you'll see that there are entry limits and page limits, but this is kind of a pre-scripted or a prescripted, I should say, table for you. So there's not really any creativity here for you. So section 6. This is where we want to know what you do outside of 4-H. church, school, community organizations, anything that you do outside of 4-H, and what's important to you. We've seen things like FFA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. At school, if you National Junior Honor Society or National Honor Society, maybe you serve as an altar server at church. There's lots of different things here that you could include, but this shows us that you are a well-rounded youth and that you do a lot of different things. And so we want to see at least something in here. So section 7, man, this is a tough one. If somebody would have asked me when I was 8 years old what I was going to do with the rest of my life, I really don't remember what I would have said. Probably would have said something like a doctor or a lawyer, right? But we want to know, what did they do to learn about that career, to learn about that job? Even if they're a junior, right? There is still an opportunity for them to explore different careers and learn about the different things that go into their current career choice. We know it's going to change. Honestly, mine changed like 50 times, but we want to know that they're kind of thinking towards the future and wanting to know what a career exploration looks like. So this is what judges are going to look for. So books that are submitted for contest are going to look vastly different than books that are just wanting to maintain record. And that's okay. But we're going to provide some clarification on what that looks like. So this is what our score sheet looks like. You can see here in the 4-H story and photo portfolio that we want to know about your family and background, and we want to know about what their activity highlights are, and leadership and citizenship projects, and future 4-H plans and goals. We want to make sure that you know how to follow guidelines, and in your story that you can use correct punctuation and grammar and spelling and those kinds of things. Overall, we just want to make sure that it's organized and follows and that it follows the guidelines in some of in what we've included for the 4-H story and photo. So on the report form, this is what we're looking for in section 1. Just real quick, if you have your microphone on, can you mute it? I'm hearing a dog barking. Section 1, we are going to include up to 4 projects and up to 4 years for those projects. So we want to make sure that those experiences are age appropriate for the length and time that they're participating in those projects. We want to make sure that we include those noteworthy learning experiences. Maybe if it was their first time going to a major show or maybe participating at a district contest, we want to make sure that we list those experiences. We want to see what knowledge they've gained and how did they grow. So our judges in section 1 really look for growth. They want to see how they've changed and what it looks like and what it means and how they want to progress in the future. Section 2 is our leadership experiences. So this shows a variety. We want to show a variety of different types of experiences. So not just that you were a club officer, but shows that you tried new things and that you tried to engage yourself as a leader. Again, we want to make sure that it's appropriate for the age and time in the 4-H program. Section 3 is community service. Again, we want to show some variety of types of experiences, but we also want to show that they tried to take the lead and either did a community service project on their own or that they led one for their club or their group. Section 4 talks about other 4-H projects, and we just want to explain those experiences and their significance. Section 5 talks about 4-H recognition and awards. We want to know what awards have you gotten in the 4-H program and why it was important to you. Section 6 is non-4-H activities. And so we want to know, see that they're a well-rounded youth. And then Section 7 is college and career exploration. So there are lots of different record book covers. You can put it in a folder, you can put it in a binder. There is an official record book cover from the National 4-H Mall, and some county offices may have some of those. I can tell you for district competition this year, we are doing an online submission, so we will not be using a record book cover. And that's just to assist us in the judging process and the facilitation of that. We won't need it, but your county may still require it. You may want it, the official record book cover to be able to store your book from year to year. And that's definitely up to you. So overall, we're looking for something that's clean and neat and organized. Handwriting is acceptable. We just want to make sure that it's neat and organized. We want to make sure that correct grammar and punctuation is being used and that you follow those within those text margins, excuse me. And so it'll be 1.5 inches on the left-hand side and then 1 inch on the top, bottom, and right. You can use regular type copy paper, but we do ask that you stay away from like construction paper and those kinds of things. We do want to see creativity, especially in the story. And so be able to express that. You can use different types of fonts in your stories, but we really do suggest that you stick to a basic type font, such as Times New Roman or Calibri or Arial, something that's very readable. So just some additional changes. We won't be putting any of the old report forms in any book. We will only be using that current book to be judging. There are the updated categories. And then the photography books do not have any additional photos. There are 25 categories. So we want to make sure that you see the different categories that we have here. And there is an opportunity for just about every 4-H project, to see a or to have a competitive record book category. So I know it's a lot, but I can honestly tell you, if you start with the biggest chunk first, which in my experience is section 1, that's normally the hardest part because that's probably the most intensive part. But you can do it because guess what? You can eat an elephant. You just have to do it one bite at a time. And so I really encourage you to kind of section it out and take it one piece at a time instead of trying to do it all at once. So record book winners, senior record book winners who win first place do have an opportunity to attend the Texas 4-H Leadership Conference during the Thanksgiving break. And this is the trip to Washington, D.C. It's in the neighborhood of anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,500. But it's a really neat trip. I've been fortunate enough to be able to chaperone it once, and it's a neat trip to be able to tour the nation's capital. So senior 4-H members who have won first place may submit an additional record book in future years in the same category. So if you have any questions, first, contact your county extension agent. Second, you can contact me. And there's my contact information there. But I really do encourage you to reach out to your county extension agent first before you contact me. So that is what I have for tonight.